Congratulations are in order for a couple of Lions. We recap what we saw over the weekend and a little history lesson as well on this Monday edition of Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, here we go, everybody. Another week of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt Dery with you on this, Monday, January 30th into Tuesday, January 31st. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Follow us on Twitter at Dery Speaks, D-E-R-Y Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, the Matt Dery Facebook fan page. And as always, you can watch us on the Locked On Lions YouTube channel. On the show today, a couple of Lions are going to the Pro Bowl festivities this coming weekend in Vegas. We'll tell you about that. Got to recap the games this weekend and what we saw. And especially on the NFC side, there's something I saw that gives me hope for the Detroit Lions. We'll get into that. A little history lesson. Slay and Sue are going to the Super Bowl. Yes, Sue, S-U-H, Super Bowl. And the Lions apparently have a new tight ends coach. All of that today here on the program. But thanks for checking us out, watching and listening to Locked On Lions. Senior Bowl going to go on this week with all the practices and then the game on Saturday. Andrew Siciliano will have the play-by-play call on the NFL Network for the Senior Bowl, and he's going to join us at some point this week. We are getting that all figured out. All right, first things first, what we saw this weekend. Number one, Eagles over the Niners, not a surprise. Brock Purdy got hurt. Josh Johnson, the former Lion, came in. So they were down to their fourth-string quarterback. And Philadelphia pounded the Niners into submission. And the Eagles are going back to the Super Bowl, this time under the very smarmy Nick Sirianni. I got to be honest, I'm rooting for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl over the Eagles, even though I think Philly's going to win, because I just like Andy Reid better than Sirianni. Sirianni, to me, is just, he's kind of, I don't know, he's kind of a Richard at times. Good coach, though. But Philadelphia was dominant. And there's something that I saw in that game this weekend that made me think very positively about our Honolulu Blue and Silver Gladiators. And that's this. Did anybody watch Mailata, Kelsey, Lane Johnson? And I can't name them all off the top of my head. That Eagles offensive line just destroyed San Francisco. And that's a really good Niner defense. That's a really good Niner front. The Niners defensive coordinator, DeMeco Ryans, is about to take the Texans' job. All right? San Francisco's defense is really, really good. We talk about Armstead and Bosa and Fred Warner, all those guys. They're excellent. Ward. That's a really good defense. But the Eagles just pushed them around and kept running the football. Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, is going to be at the Carrier Dome tonight for the Syracuse game. Jalen Hurts didn't even have a good game. He didn't have to do anything. He threw the ball like 20 times. I think he threw for less than 200 yards. But the Eagles pounded Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. And they played Lions football. They used their offensive line. They used the running game. And they just wore down San Francisco. And it made me think about the Lions offensive line and Frank Ragnow and Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker and Jonah Jackson and whomever's at right guard next year. Maybe it's Vaitai, maybe it's somebody new. I don't think it'll be Evan Brown. But the Eagles were playing the way the Lions want to play. Pound the rock. Now, this season, especially at home, the Lions offense under Ben Johnson threw the football with great accuracy and great performance under Jared Goff, especially at home. But how did they beat Green Bay? They pounded them into submission. How did they beat the Giants on the road? They ran the football down their throats with Jamal Williams, Swift, Jackson at times, Craig Reynolds. Come on, Craig. At any point this year, the Lions knew that in certain games, they could finish games by running the rock. And that's what Philly did yesterday. But they ran over 40 times in the game. And I respect that. And I see what the Eagles have built with their offensive line and their defensive line. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, who's been around 12, 13 years, who we had on the podcast. We'll see if we can get him on again the next couple of weeks. But the guys that Philly has up front, Hassan Reddick coming off the edge. I see Brad Holmes building this team very similarly to what Howie Roseman does in Philly. Howie Roseman, Jeff Lurie, everybody in the Eagles front office values offensive line play and defensive line play. And you just see it with the depth. And you see it with, Brandon Graham would be a starter on just about any other team. But for the Eagles, he comes in, second down pass rush, third down pass rush, and they just win up front. They knocked Brock Purdy out of the game. He tore his UCL or whatever in the shoulder. It's going to be out for 6 months, just announced today. So that'll fuel speculation that Tommy Boy will be going to San Francisco and go back home because Purdy's going to be out a while. 6 months, you're talking about he won't be ready until probably the regular season. Probably wouldn't even take part in training camp or even the preseason coming back from that major shoulder injury. Now they've got Trey Lance and all of that, but Philadelphia was physical up front on both sides of the ball, and that's what the Lions are trying to build. So it made me think about, if Brad Holmes could get a right guard or an offensive lineman that he likes at 6 or at 18 or one of the second-round picks, he's going to do it. Watch Philadelphia's offensive line just manhandle the Niners. And nobody manhandles San Francisco's defense. Also yesterday, the second game, the late game last night, Kansas City hosting Cincinnati. The Chiefs win 23-20 on the Butker field goal. Couple of things. Number one, and I tweeted this out, I felt so bad for Joseph Osai, the Bengals outside linebacker and edge rusher, number 58, who, of course, pushed Patrick Mahomes while he was out of bounds. 15-yard penalty, set up Butker to kick the field goal. I felt so bad for that young kid. He's a second-year player out of Texas. He's 22 years old, and he was crying on the sidelines, and they just kept showing him. And I get it. It's a dumb penalty. He screwed up. You want to get on his case, and I'm sure people in Cincinnati aren't real happy with Joseph Osai today, but that kid played a whale of a game yesterday, and he made a mistake. And if you've played sports before, you know that sometimes when you're near a sideline and you're chasing the best player in football right now, arguably, in Patrick Mahomes, you're trying to get him so, it's tough to hold up. It's not like he kicked somebody like Sue used to, or cheap shotted somebody, or, took a camera like Pat Bev did in that Lakers Celtics game over the weekend and showed it to the referee and get a technical. Osai was just trying to make a play. And I give him credit for speaking afterwards and, answering questions, but that was devastating. The Bengals were right there and played a heck of a game, but unfortunately came up short against Kansas City. All right, one other thing stood out to me from yesterday, and I want to pick that up when we come back. But first, I want to tell you about PrizePicks Daily Fantasy that we've been talking about that is so much fun. And here we go. NBA, NHL, college basketball, big games, and, of course, the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. You want to get involved with PrizePicks. You got to do it. It's you against the projections. You're not going up against any friends or anybody else. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if these players score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Pistons playing tonight. What are they, Milwaukee against the Bucks? You want to see about Giannis? What's the projection? Maybe 26 points, 25 points. You bet below or above it, and it gives you interest in the game, and you can win money. No competing against other people, just you against projections available. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that simple. You download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, one other thing that stood out from yesterday's AFC Championship game, and congratulations to Kansas City and Mahomes playing on the bad ankle and everything else. And boy, Chris Jones had a whale of a game for the Chiefs. How about them Chiefs yesterday? The other thing that stood out is CBS has a big decision to make, but it's not a hard decision. There is no way you can bring Tony Romo back next season to work with Jim Nantz. No way. He sucks. It's unlistenable now to listen to a game of that magnitude, the AFC Championship game, and have to listen to Tony Romo yucking it up, screaming, not preparing. I guess Kansas City's not Burrow land, or what do they call it? Burrowhead? They've been calling it Burrowhead all week, dummy. Don't you pay attention? Tony, get off the golf course and do some prep. What are they going to do here, Jim? What are they going to do here? What do you mean, what are they going to do here? You're the analyst. Have you watched any tape? He didn't have any idea what was going on in that game yesterday. None. On top of having that high-pitched, squealy voice, laughing and saying Jim 1,000 times and making noises. It was unbelievable how annoying that was. The whole game. I was texting friends in the business, guys on air, big name guys yesterday. I'm like, am I wrong on this? They're like, no, it's horrible. Everybody. At one point, I literally was like ready to go to my phone and dial up Ian Eagle and Tony Baselli on Westwood One and try to sync my phone to the audio. Tony Romo cannot be the number one analyst next year. And if Tom Brady retires, which I don't think he will, could like Fox lend Greg Olsen to CBS and you put Olsen on with Nantz and then Brady would be on with Burkhardt. If I'm Charles Davis, the number 2 NFL analyst, he works with Ian Eagle. I mean, I'm getting ready to be called up to the big show here. And CBS has done this before. Phil Simms was shoved to the studio after many years as Nantz's partner. Can we do the same thing with Romo? Here's an idea. Romo to the studio, Nate Burleson as the number one analyst. Please, anybody but Romo. First year, he was unbelievably good. He predicted every play. They gave him a new contract, $18 million a year. He's terrible. If there's anybody out there that thinks Tony Romo was good yesterday, make a comment on YouTube or tweet to me or whatever. That was unlistenable. And you could tell Nantz was annoyed. You could just tell. I mean, that was brutal to listen to. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. All right, I got to do Lions history lesson. One other note, though, before I get to that. The Lions have hired a new tight ends coach today. They are kind of going back to what they've always done, and that is Dan Campbell has hired a very good staff. We saw it with the progress that was made this year of former players. And Steve Hyden, the longtime NFL tight end, played for the Browns, played for the Cardinals, and has been the tight ends coach for the Cardinals like the last 10 years. Steve Hyden is coming over as the Lions' new tight ends coach. No one knows yet what role Tanner Engstrand will have and if he's staying with the organization or not. The young assistant coach that was the passing game coordinator and tight ends coach this past year, but Engstrand is apparently out, and Steve Hyden is in as tight ends coach. This was a guy that played in the NFL at the same time Dan Campbell did, obviously same position. They've got a history together, and Hyden is coming over to be the Lions tight ends coach. Also today, it was announced, Amon-Ra St. Brown officially and Penei Sewell will join Frank Ragnow in Vegas for the Pro Bowl games this weekend. Now, it's not an actual game. It's a bunch of contests and stuff, but that makes 3 Lions represented this weekend at the Pro Bowl. Well-deserved. St. Brown, of course, was an alternate. You could have made an argument for him to make the game. I thought Penei Sewell was somebody that got snubbed in a big way and should have been at the Pro Bowl from day one. But now that Lane Johnson from the Eagles can't go because he's going to be in the Super Bowl, Penei Sewell gets to go in his stead, and this is going to be the first of many trips for Sewell to these Pro Bowl games or Pro Bowl activities, or what are they doing? Capture the flag and a touch football game and hula hoop contest, whatever it is. The Lions will be represented with Ragnow, St. Brown, and Sewell. So congratulations to Penei Sewell. I think it's great. I think it's very cool. The Lions have 3 Pro Bowlers going this weekend. All right, speaking of next weekend, you want to bet on the Super Bowl? The only app you need, the only place you need to go, and for your Super Bowl party, you got to have it, America's #1 sports book, that is FanDuel. Really excited about our new sports betting partner here on Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America. FanDuel, they're the best. And if you're new to them, even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. How sweet is that? FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. I like Philadelphia in this game. I think the spread is at 1 right now. I'd take the Eagles right now. I just think they're so physical, and I don't think Mahomes is healthy enough. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so my crack research staff sent me this little nugget today, and it's kind of a Lions history lesson as we head to the Super Bowl. And I thought this was really, really good. Let's go back to 2014, shall we? 2014. The Detroit Lions had the following players on their roster who would become Pro Bowl players, All-Pro, or play significant roles in winning a Super Bowl. Calvin Johnson, Ndamukong Suh, Matthew Stafford, Darius Slay. Across the street from Ford Field is, of course, the mediocre at best edifice that is Comerica Park. 2014, that Tigers team featured Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Chef Rick Porcello, and Anibal Sanchez. All 4 of those pitchers would go on to win the World Series with other teams, and 3 of those would win Cy Youngs after leaving the Tigers. Verlander won the World Series with the Astros, Scherzer with Washington, Porcello with Boston, and Sanchez with Washington. So, 2014, that was the last year that both franchises featured those 4 players on the respective rosters. If the Eagles win the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, like I think they will, that means Darius Slay wins a Super Bowl, joining Ndamukong Suh. That would leave Calvin Johnson as the only one of those 8 not to win a championship. How about that? And you could argue Calvin was the best of all of them. Although while I'm no Justin Verlander fan, that guy is unbelievable. All right? How crazy is that? Matthew Stafford has even won the Super Bowl. Sue would win a Super Bowl. Again, Slay would win a Super Bowl if he wins this year. Isn't that wild? Like, this town needs a winner. The Lions provided this year that winner, but you still have to go back and think about 2014 and what the Lions and the Tigers had. And if Slay goes on to win, then 7 of those 8 stars on those 2 teams have all won championships after leaving Detroit. It hurts. It's kind of a gut punch for a lot of my listeners and the fans, but man, that is pretty wild. That is some serious research from my crack research staff. And I do think Darius Slay and Ndamukong Suh are going to win the Super Bowl. By the way, does anybody follow Suh on Twitter? Gosh, he's cocky. He's just so cocky. Guy showed up in Philly and is like trash talking on Twitter. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to the Super Bowl. Oh yeah. Not a surprise, back again. Like, yeah, Damo, you picked Philly 3 quarters through the season. You know, you hitched your wagon. And Ndamukong Suh's still a good player. And I wish the Lions had never let him walk, but I don't know. I find him to be a little cocky. Although I thought the Chiefs yesterday were a little cocky after the game. Like, see, you guys, the Cincinnati mayor, and screw you, and you're a jabroni, and I told y'all we were, people counted us out. You won by 3 points thanks to a field goal that barely crossed over the crossbar after a penalty. Like, slow down. You didn't dominate the Bengals. I think Philly's going to beat Kansas City. I do. All right, that'll do it for this Monday edition of Locked On Lions. Thanks for making this your first listen. We're back again tomorrow.